My mother called us one day and said, I've made a will. We said, great. I want you all to know what's in the will. We said, great. All of you are getting nothing. We said,
handing over the keys, we're still talking to the patriarch. Has that conversation gotten easier?
businesses 3 generations ago were often started by patriarchs. Fathers today are much more invested in both their sons and their daughters.
How often do you see a well-drafted family constitution?
A family settlement, everybody should be unhappy.
I know you have 3 daughters, but what if you have a daughter and a son?
Not great. Depends of your background, your heritage, how strong your daughters have been educated for.
At what point should a professional step in?
You can step in and scream and shout all you want. It's not your check, it's not your balance sheet.
Do you see any major differences when you deal with a matriarch?
Matriarchs are also. The woman has to prove herself by competence, by actually showing the value that she brings to the table.
Are you seeing an increase in the number of trusts being set up by these families?
There are trusts and there are trusts. When a man comes into my room with a mistake, he is defending himself. When a woman comes into my room, she's looking out of which floor to jump. It's, as always, much more difficult for us.
In the last 3 decades in India, we've experienced an extraordinary phase of economic transformation and wealth creation. And in line with that, family businesses have scaled. And what makes the present moment particularly significant is that we're now entering a period in which much of this wealth is now beginning to move across generations. Founders are contemplating succession. Next-gen leaders are assuming greater responsibility. Many of you are in the audience today, and families are increasingly engaging with questions of governance, stewardship, and the long-term purpose of wealth. So in this fireside chat, Zia and I will talk about trends in wealth preservation that she sees, and we'll particularly look at how starting that initial conversation of handing over the keys, so to speak, can be tough, accounting for different family dynamics at play, looking at what are the most important questions that need to be asked, the changing roles of women in those families of successors, and what solutions can be implemented. And I guess what can the next generation do in that long-term preservation conversation? Just to take you through the flow. So I'm going to give it now to Zia to sort of ask her the first question. This is sort of stepping back a bit, Zia, about your own journey, setting the scene. You've come from you've built one of the most respected law firms, and you started at a time where there weren't that many women lawyers, let alone female founders. So what does it actually take to build an institution that survives beyond its founder?
I don't know if a law firm is opposite to this conversation, but I guess generically, from a point of view of family and generational transition, it's not easy, actually, because leave aside a service provider and a law firm, businesses 3 generations ago were often started by patriarchs, right? And the second generation still had more men than women. The traditional philosophy was you married your daughter into a good family and your son ran the business. I think something has changed, but not so much still. I think it's easier when, like me, we have only 3 daughters. So there's no gender bias. But I think that fathers today, unlike fathers 20 years ago, are much more invested in both their sons and their daughters. And I say that because over the last 5 to 7 years, I have got calls from clients who simply ask me to meet their daughters to mentor them. And of course, you can't say no to that, right? That's part of your job. But I think that what Devina and the other panel was pointing out earlier is that the financial literacy is still subpar. We need to know more about managing money, managing our money, being able to make mistakes, not being pulled down for making the mistakes just because we are women. As I always say that, when a man comes into my room with a mistake, he is defending himself. When a woman comes into my room, she is looking out of which floor to jump. So it's, generational shifts in investment and wealth creation and succession are just beginning to really take much more structural shape than before. And I think a lot of it has to also do with strong mothers, where we have them, and broad-minded fathers. It's all about merit. It's all about giving your generation an equal chance. And it's all about recognizing that there is a difference between ownership and management.
Zia, looking at that generational shift you mentioned, that emotional transition that we have to talk about, handing over the keys, we're still talking to the patriarch. How has that changed? Has that conversation gotten easier?
In some cases, yes, because I think when you see the bad stories of the past, you probably want to make sure that it doesn't get repeated in your own. And I think the difficult conversations are best had when the family is still together, not when you've reached a flashpoint of dissonance or, disconnect. But when the family is still a united whole, those conversations are more acceptable. Family constitutions are much more popular, as Somya would know, than before. And, it's easy. It's like my mother. She basically called us one day and said, I've made a will. So we said, great. So she said, I want you all to know what's in the will. We said, great. She said, all of you are getting absolutely nothing. We said, okay. So she said, so you don't have to fight about anything. We said, okay. So that was an easy conversation, right? But I think that I have seen families not wait for death. I have seen families wanting to talk about sometimes sensible separation as well. You look at the large family settlements which have happened in the past. Some have happened very elegantly and graciously because at one level, the earlier generation and the younger generation probably feel that it's not possible to work as in sync together as maybe the earlier generations did. And frankly, that's fine. As long as divisions are fair, are, as I always say in a family settlement, everybody should be unhappy. Otherwise, it won't work. One side is happy and the other side is unhappy, there's no family settlement. Everyone has to be unhappy. But the realization of wanting to do something in your lifetime, whether it's by trusts or by discussions or a family constitution, has certainly been more prominent than before.
Interesting that initial transition from obviously talking about it to then setting up structures like trusts you mentioned, different sort of structures of I guess, succeeding for the wealth. I guess, how often do you see a well-drafted family constitution? You mentioned the will.
It's not impossible. I mean, that's what Waterfield does, right? But I think that the nuances of every possible you can't foresee everything. There are some leaps of faith that any document will have to take. Mm-hmm. And as I always tease my clients who come for advice, I said, you can't rule from the grave. After a point, you're there and you can't control what's here. So you do the best you can. But constitutions set out at least a path where the generations have an idea of who will manage what. I've seen a generation where some siblings say, I don't want to be in management. And they accept that the person who is doing the managing of the business is okay to be given more, right? Because their wealth is going up, but they're not working as much. The division of and the disconnect really comes up when there's a perception amongst elder brothers or younger cousins that I'm working hard and why is he or she getting the money, or she's working hard and why is he getting the money. That's where human nature comes in. And that is the irritation that you have to quell sooner rather than later. And the difficult part is really telling somebody that this one is better than you. That's a tough one, right? It could be a sibling or it could be a first cousin, or two brothers could actually agree that, okay, this daughter or son is better than that daughter or son, but that's a difficult conversation. So it's not a one conversation, it's over the years.
Does the conversation change? You mentioned two brothers. Say there's a woman now, a daughter in the picture. I know you have three daughters, but what if there's a daughter and a son? How are families looking at it in terms of equity, being equitable, I guess?
Well, it's not great. I think that, depends of your background, your heritage, your culture, how strong your daughters have been educated for, what the brother is like. It's personality driven. But I think that mothers are standing up more than before for their daughters. I know that in one large family, the mother had to call me offline and say, don't listen to him. You give my daughter equal. I said, it's not my money, but I can certainly suggest it. So mothers are now willing to fight more than they were before. And of course, women are influential in any large family and wealthy family. And I think the father also is feeling more ashamed if he doesn't take what his daughter should get into account, but more in terms of wealth, still not in terms of as much in management. That is the reality. Sometimes I've seen families give a smaller business and a smaller balance sheet for the daughter to run. But the crown jewels, 50, 60, 70% of the time stay with the son. Sorry, girls.
So, Zia, at what point should a professional step in and sort of?
When they're asked, and you can step in and scream and shout all you want. It's not your check, it's not your balance sheet, it's not the business that you have created. And you can just guide, you can just basically say that, have you really looked at the traits of all your siblings or all your children? And have you identified what are the strengths and weaknesses of each child? I always cite the Swedish family called the Wallenbergs. They have lasted without breaking up for 5 generations. And they've managed to do it reasonably well. They've understood who has to run what. They've talked about it. There has been a transitional period where the elders just don't disappear. They step down and allow the transition, and in the meantime have the conversations. And for 5 generations to stay together, and they have a constitution, and it's remarkable. I think some groups in the South also have rotational chairmanships, and how they want to deal with the management. And I think ultimately also it's not a bad thing to talk about a sensible separation. You can't go on forever if you're not getting on with each other, right? So then the best thing is to talk it through and do something which is gracious. Because fighting is a lose-lose, right? Nobody wins in a family fight. Nobody wins. It's just how much you're willing to give up to get to peace.
And what are the most important questions you see families asking today as they think about their legacy? What are they thinking? I mean, obviously, you're able to advise what you think they should be doing, but when you talk to all these families and advise them, especially as they're separating or thinking about their next generation, what questions are they asking? Are they looking at, the difference? Is there ownership, competence? Are they putting their children on advisory boards? Are they looking at these sort of different solutions?
Again, it's bespoke, right? Some families are bringing their children onto the boards to let them start the journey. Some are, as I said, giving small businesses to test their children out, men, daughters or sons. But it's difficult to cede control, right? And especially when you have been a patriarch for decades, a respected patriarch, a successful patriarch, all the boxes are being ticked. You as a patriarch really have to have a mind shift and a change to say that, okay, it's okay if I want a Coca-Cola in 3 minutes, I get it in 2 minutes, right? So the loss of control is really the mindset that the patriarch or matriarch in some cases has to go through. And I think the guidance is that it doesn't have to be absolute. It doesn't have to be a knife. It has to be somewhere where the family appreciates and is inclusive about the conversation and respects the role that the wealth creator has played. You can't get away from the fact that you are where you are because somebody else had worked their tail off.
Do you see any major differences when you deal with a matriarch?
I've dealt with few matriarchs, more patriarchs. Uh, Matriarchs are also controlling and probably more EQ, probably more willing to allow for some inequalities in favor of the girl child, which the sons have to tolerate, I guess. But not many matriarchs in this business world today. It's much more men who are the creators so far.
You mentioned, obviously, we just spoke about patriarchs, the nuanced cultural pull there. Do you see any other, what are the other biggest barriers that are preventing women from actually claiming or exercising these rights they have?
What rights do they have? In the sense that if it's not HUF property, then it is self-created by the patriarch. So how do you sit and demand, whether you're a man or a woman, that I have to get X%, right? It's pretty much what the wealth creator decides. I think that the woman has to prove herself by competence, by education, by actually showing the value that she brings to the table in the business environment, and to be able to work with actually a much larger bunch of men than anything else today, right? So EQ at its highest, IQ at its highest, it's as always much more difficult for us.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's never easy, is it? If we look at the different family dynamics, we mentioned, with sons and daughters. Now, if we take in the whole offshore equation to the sort of conversation, a lot of families moving their wealth offshores. You've got one person, an NRI there. How does this change the way they should look at their succession planning?
So most families have one NRI, whether it's a woman or a man. I think it's a legitimate way to de-risk part of your wealth here for whatever reason, whether in dollars, as the Venus says, which is depreciating, or just de-risk what you have here. But again, I think if you look at it, whatever is moved offshore legitimately is part of the hodgepodge, right? In that sense. It's not that if it belongs to the NRI. No, I don't think it's intended to. It's just that the NRI can hold it and invest it. But I think from a matriarch or a patriarch point of view, it is part of the overall wealth of the family. I think it's just de-risking. It's also exciting to invest in offshore startups, offshore ventures, not just stocks. And some people just want to enjoy a life of living and working abroad for a certain time, whether it's a long time or a short time. Children grow up, children go to college. They may not want to come back. As three daughters, the one dread we had when we sent them to America is, will they all come back? Which they did. But it's all where you take. Yeah, so.
No, absolutely. Everyone has an NRI, like you said, in their family. Just out of curiosity, in the last few years, where are they shifting to? I mean, just where are the offshore hubs that they're looking at to park wealth?
Well, it was Dubai for a while,
Yeah.
Singapore. Those were the two places where people felt comfortable moving with families because there was infrastructure. Those were the two hottest spots.
And in the light of the recent, conflicts we're seeing, Israel, U.S., Iran, and what we're seeing on attacks in Dubai, has there been any inquiries you're fielding in the last few days
I
or
think the
weeks?
people who have settled in Dubai are not saying we're going to rush back home. They're happy in Dubai. Uh, Obviously not now, but I mean, they don't think this, well, by God's grace, it won't last forever. People in Singapore, they find it safe, good environment, good education for their children. Some of the Indian families I know are also putting their sons through military on that Sentosa island, where they have to go through rigorous training, so they become part of that community. But some families come back home. Either it's because their parents are growing old, or they're empty nesters, their children have flown. Life is frankly easier and nice back home if you are wealthy, which you were in the first place because you went abroad. So I think that it's a mismatch. I've seen people come back, mainly for parents, frankly. Some come back for great opportunities, but it depends how now the Americans offer the opportunities, right? We had a brain drain, now we have a visa problem, now we have an Indian environment that is attractive, so we'll probably see a shift of residents, and therefore they'll keep whatever they made there, but they'll have to now start earning here.
Okay, shifting back to sort of wealth structures, we mentioned trusts. Are you seeing an increase in the number of trusts being set up by these families in the last few years? I know you mentioned it's been going for a while. And are there particular types of trusts that these families are looking at?
So I think 5 years ago or a little more, when everybody was worried about wealth tax, wealth tax, wealth tax, we saw a lot more of these trusts being set up for tax purposes to escape estate duty.
Inheritance tax, yeah.
Estate tax. But now I think everybody has set up most of the trusts that they wanted to. Soumya would know. I don't think I see the rush of trusts that I saw a few years ago. Again, it depends, there are trusts and there are trusts. There are not many trusts where the settlor or the wealth giver is willing to give it away irrevocably. That's a tough one. They want to stay on as trustees, they want to control the environment for a while. How are the kids going to get married? What are the sons-in-law or daughters-in-law going to be like? So there's always an element of control that is still exercised. And as you become 35, 40, 45, the parents are easier off in letting you handle your own wealth. But nobody gives everything away at one shot. Nor should they.
Tell me something on those trusts. Does it differ when family businesses as the primary assets are listed or not listed?
It gets more complicated if it's listed, and there are various solutions that people think of. One is that however many children you have, you divide the ownership equally or unequally, as the case may be. But if somebody wants to, have a 10-year ride and just sell the shares that he or she has, that is normally not allowed, in the sense that there is always a right of first refusal given to the remaining siblings, and there is always a methodology by which the money can be paid in stages. Because if your share is worth 1,000 crores, who's going to just land up from one of the siblings of having the 1,000 crores to give? So there's also a methodology by which payment gets deferred. There's a price which is sometimes a discount to the market. And this again is a discussion. So you can't sell for 10 years, then you can sell. Then you can't sell more than 5% if it's listed because it'll trigger an offer, etc.,
It's a
etc.
constant conversation. Okay, conscious of the time. So one last question before I open it up to the floor is, we have a lot of women in the audience, mostly women. What's a word of wisdom that you want to share with them as they approach managing, growing, preserving their wealth?
Get as financially literate as you can, basically, as the earlier panel said. Know what you're doing. Be interested in your own wealth creation. Don't worry about making mistakes. Take professional advice, actually. Because if you're a woman and you start discussing ETFs, etc., with your husband, God knows what reaction you'll get. So just have proper advisors who can actually give you the A for apple, B for ball, right? And then I think have a voice that is sensible. Don't have an entitled voice. There is a difference between saying if it's my right to have half, and that I would like to earn the half, for both men and for women, right? I mean, I always tell my 3 daughters that, you mess around, it's your problem. So behave however old you are, and that's the control that you want to have as a parent. But as the generation grows up and becomes much more mature, and they talk about what asset classes they would like, they would talk about how they would like to divide between land and stock and liquid securities, etc., because you allow them to consult and grow. I mean, otherwise, you've got married, you've had children, and who's telling you how to invest your wealth?
Thank you, Zia. Well said. Wise words. I'm going to open it up now to the floor, and we have a question, I think, already for Zia.
My question, Sia, is there is a very delicate balance between marriage as an institution of trust and the potential of things going wrong. So, would you advise boys and girls to get into a prenup before a wedding, or?
Prenups are not enforceable in India.
Okay.
So the only thing you can do is, if you are getting your daughter married, is to get her married under the Special Marriage Act. Because for some reason, that act does not allow the man to get alimony, only the woman. They'll switch it, but right now, we're safe.
Thank you.
If I can just add to this, is it advisable to get your child married in India or in the US?
It depends
No,
where is the
because
US, right?
Sorry?
It depends where. You get them married in California, you have community property. You get them married in New York, you can have a prenup. So it is very state specific. So India's fine from my perspective. I would just do a Special Marriage Act.
No, if the
and
boy
be
is
done.
from the US,
But is he Indian US?
no, he's an American.
American US.
and the daughter is from here. So what would you advise for the
Then
marriage?
have a foreign prenup, get a marriage done there, and have it registered back here, and then pray for the best.
Thank
You know,
you.
prenups are not the answer to everything either. Prenups are challenged, sometimes successfully challenged. Um, I think that if you're worried about wealth diversion, in case, God forbid, something goes wrong, set up a trust.
A question about the HUF. It was formed earlier as a tax entity so you could save tax. But now with families fighting, let's say brothers, sisters, etc., fighting, and they're all part of the HUF, do you think it's a valid investment or a tax entity anymore? Would you create an HUF and
There's no choice, right? If it's HUF property, it remains HUF property with a karta until it's dissolved. So you can dissolve an HUF. But otherwise, HUF property is HUF property because it's passed down through generations. There are fights about whether it's HUF property or not HUF property. It's still used as a extra assessee for income. But now the woman, even a married daughter, can have access to the HUF, which nobody realized. They changed the law. So that doesn't sit well with the son who thought that the girl had gone away. But I think you have to again see what is in the HUF, right? I mean, is it gazillions or millions? Is it some assets which you would like distributed? You can even have a partial dissolution of an HUF. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. So again, it's the balance sheet of the HUF that would determine what you want to do with it. You don't want to fight afterwards. That's all.
But if the property is in the HUF, can you dissolve the HUF completely if you
You
don't
can.
have everyone's assent?
No. When you dissolve it, you have to distribute it as per the HUF beneficiaries. You can't say, I want to dissolve the HUF and I'm taking away 100% of it. You
No.
can't do that.
I just was curious to ask, when you evaluate an organization, however small or big, you have the tangible assets that are the tangible assets, and you have the intangible ones. And in women-led organizations, has anyone studied whether the value of the intangible assets alter because of the nature of a female-led organization?
I wish.
Yeah,
But I think that the intangible only reflects in the value of the organization if the value creation builds up the value, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the last panel was talking about how when women were part of the fund or the fund creation, things just got better value-wise. But ultimately, you're measured in money, right?
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question.
Devina, bolo.
I had a comment and a question. So my comment was that for a long time I have been noticing this, that when family tree is drawn up for any Indian business family in magazines, the daughters are missing. I mean, we talk about the Ambani brothers fighting. Nobody remembers that Dhirubhai Ambani had 2 daughters as well. And that Rahul Bajaj has a daughter. So all of that is completely forgotten. Very lately, I saw about 6 months ago, one business magazine doing a next-gen kind of a whole issue, and where I saw exactly what you mentioned, that now in not in all, but in some of them, the daughters are there, but they get the smaller business, not the flagship business. So again, barring, I think, one exception that was pretty much clear. So I would say, I mean, people who are from, I mean, my parents were professors, so I had nothing to inherit. But, those of you who are from business families do have the uncomfortable conversations. And my question was that in the 21st century, we have this thing now that ancestral property also belongs to the daughter. And I don't think it is particularly only for HUF property, right? What if the business was set up by the grandfather? What has been your experience? Do the daughters get a fair share of that? If it's the father, as you said, that they can make a will as per their wishes, but if when it is the
Well, if
grandfather,
it's HUF, it's the law. But if it is private wealth and not HUF, then it depends on what the patriarch wants to do, right?
yeah, but
So
I mean,
that's
suppose the
problem.
grandfather is no longer around, but
But
it was
he's-
set up by the grandfather.
Well, if it was set up by the grandfather, then if it's not HUF, because he's not put it in the HUF hotspot,
Right.
it's his. So he has to leave a will, or he has to gift part of it during his lifetime. Again, it's very bespoke, Devina, because what is an HUF property? Hindu undivided family.
Right.
Which means that if you are the creator of the first rupee, there was no family on top of you for it to become HUF unless you put it for tax reasons in the HUF, which now fewer and fewer people are doing because they'd rather have control than not have, and not have the statutory obligation to divide it in the way that they would otherwise want to divide it.
Right. And you mentioned some of these South Indian families having a family constitution. Some of them specifically say that daughters will not be part of the family business. I mean, that is
now,
part of the
hopefully-
constitution.
Hopefully that will be
Yeah,
a thing
so
of
I
the
mean, I
past.
still find that daughters in law are still considered part of family, but not the daughters. I ask the uncomfortable questions.
No, I think,
to
you're-
business families as well.
You're entitled to ask them. I'm
Yeah.
sure more than you,
Yeah.
the daughters of business families would want to ask them.
Yeah.
I think there is often a sense that they feel that if I ask these questions, I will be misunderstood.
Yeah, I think there's still social pressure on daughters to give it up for in favor of their brothers, at least substantially. That let's not spoil the relation. That I think is
I
still
don't
the
think the
subtext.
daughters, so in fairness, I don't think daughters are by law entitled to it if it's not HUF, right? It's not as if mera hak hai, right? The daughter has to be pushed within the family ecosystem as someone who's valued, both in terms of wanting to give her stake of inheritance, which the father or mother would like to give. But what starts getting uncomfortable is if, how do you say, the son is charaud or the girl is charaud, and then you have this, but why should I not get, and why is he getting more, and why is she getting more? I think that, when you have so much money, it's fine, right? It's how you deal with keeping the family relationship preserved. It's not worth the breakdown. So I think some families get it, some families won't get it. Some families will be halfway in between. I think it all depends on how you've been brought up.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've got maybe one more question and then.
So, Devina, just to answer, so I'm a Baha'i by religion. My mother's a Baha'i. My siblings, who are brothers, are Baha'is. And one of our 10 commandments is men and women are equal. It's not a social commandment, it's a religious commandment. And so, in my family, I mean, my brother's complaint was always that, it's equal. Don't forget.
Zia, hi. I would want to ask, when is it the right time to set up a trust? I'm the only child, my husband's the only child. I don't have my parents anymore. I have only in-laws who are old. So for kids, the logical step would be, should anything happen, there is a trust, and the kids are young to sort of take care of everything. They're minors right now. So how do we, is that like an option that has to be considered? I mean, I have already gone the HUF route and I do that, but that's for taxation purposes. But what is it?
I think that trusts are much more easier to set up now without being vexed about it.
Okay.
And Waterfield does this for a living. But I think that it's par for the course, right? When you, so for example, your in-laws who are older, have they figured out what they want to do? Have they made a will? Have they decided?
No, so I want to do it for my kids, for the wealth that
That's
I
one
have.
part. But
Yeah.
don't forget the in-laws. Because if they have not also made a will, and if you're the only child, it's fine because your son is the only child. But for yourself, I'll tell you what I've done. I've just made 3 trusts for my 3 daughters when they were young.
Yep.
And I have basically...
So at what age, like at what, I mean, either their age or your age or stage,
It's
like
your
what-
age that you have to be
Okay.
worried about, not theirs.
Okay.
Because you wanted to survive you,
Yep.
right? So right now they're minors, so the trustees would be both of you.
Correct.
And as they become majors, one option could be to add them not at 18 but at a later age
Right.
as one of the trustees to their trust.
Okay. Okay.
Don't have joint trusts for the children. Separate trusts is what I recommend.
Okay,
So
makes sense.
what you put in each asset, that child knows that that is not a conflict.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Zia, for such an engaging, fascinating conversation.